This week we will be covering the 6th Perek of Rambam's Shemonah Perakim, and in it he asks a question or confronts an issue that may have occurred to us before. That is to say, what is a person's attitude supposed to be towards the fulfillment of the mitzvahs? That is to say, is a person supposed to be kind of more naturally disposed towards the mitzvahs, as in, this makes sense, this is kind of more easy, I would have been doing this anyway, or is it kind of meant to be, or is it a more lofty spiritual position to be the kind of person who kind of, it doesn't come easily, and it's difficult for him, and he has impulses and urges and desires, and the reason why he's kind of towing the line is because God commanded it to him. So what's better? So Rambam starts off and says the clear position among the philosophers is definitely that a person who's more naturally disposed towards spirituality and towards goodness is a loftier individual. And while it's certainly possible for a person who struggles with these things to achieve in many respects that which comes naturally to a chassid, right, to a naturally pious person, all the same, the naturally pious person is better. It is better not to have to kind of do battle against one's Yetzer Hara. And that's how the philosophers come out. And in fact, Rambam says they have agreement with Shlomo Melech. He said Rambam cites 2 psukim, and I think it's either Mishlei or Kohelet, that clearly shows Shlomo Melech's disposition to agree. That is to say, it's better for a person to be more naturally disposed towards fulfilling mitzvahs, and not that he has to constantly overcome his internal yearnings. However, Rambam says that this does not seem to be the position adopted by the Rabbanan, right, Chazal. And he quotes a number of sources, 3, and looking at these 3 will actually kind of give us at least 3 different respects in which to see this. That is to say, I'm actually going to deal with his first one last. But at least for one, there's the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot in the 5th Perek that says, Lefum tzara agra. That is to say, according to the work is the reward. According to the difficulty is the reward. So the more resistance one overcomes, the better. That seems to be not in our line of thinking, right? That doesn't seem to be in agreement with the philosophers, and it doesn't seem to be in agreement with Shlomo Melech. So that's a difficulty. But moreover, it's not only that the more one overcomes, the better. It's also even the way that one thinks. Rambam quotes a Gemara. I'm not entirely sure where it is, or it's a Mishnah. He says we're not supposed to see it as I don't really want this anyway. Rather, I do want this. How do we see it? He says, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer. Right. A person should not say, I don't want to have milk and meat. Right? I don't want to wear shatnez anyway. Right? I'm not interested in getting involved in sexual immorality. Rather, no, I do want to. Rather, what can I do? My Father in heaven has told me not to do this. So, that's the position of a Tana who's saying this, that it's better to want these things, but to overcome it, not to do it because God said no. And then third, we have a statement in Sukkah that says, Kol hagadol mechavero yitzro gadol mimeno. That the greater a person is, the greater his desire to do evil. Now that is a very interesting statement, and in fact, the Gemara that precedes this is based in Sukkah, right? It's 52a, so Nun Bet Amud Aleph, and Rabbi Tatz quotes this Gemara somewhat regularly. I've heard him talk about this before, but it talks about a story about let's quote it. So it says, so ki hada bai shameluhu gavra dakamar lahi itza nixon venezil baorcha. So there's an incident where Abai heard one man say to a lady, "Oh, let's go and walk on the way together." Amar ezil afrashinu me'isura. So Abai said to himself, Abai is an Amora, a Talmudic sage, I'm going to go and I'm going to make sure to stop them from violating the prohibition that they certainly intend to violate, is the kind of undercurrent of the Gemara. So Chazal Batrayo Tlata Parsi Bagma. So he followed them on the way for 3 parsas. That's a long way, while he was kind of in the marshes, while they were on the roads. So when the man and woman were about to part ways, so when they're taking leave of each other, he heard that they were saying, "We traveled a long distance together, and the company was pleasant company." And they parted. So what's Abai's response to this? Amar Abai, Iman de Sanilech. So have hava lo hava matil lo kimi nafshe. So Abai said, in that situation, if instead of that man it had been one whom I hate, as in a euphemism for himself, he would not have been able to restrain himself from sinning. And then, what was his response? So Azal Tala nafshe beivur dedashel mitzdayer. So after becoming aware of so great a shortcoming in himself, he went and leaned against the doorpost, thinking and feeling regret. Atahu Saba, so this elder came, Tanale, Kol Hagadol Mechavero Yitro Gadol Himeno. So anyone who's greater than another, his evil inclination is greater than his. Now, this is an amazing story. And the way Rabbi Tatz explains is that the way we think of tzaddikim is that, these people are so holy, they don't even have any desire to do these things. They're just they're angels. They have no taivas, they have no desires, they have no connection to that kind of thing. But here we see exactly the opposite. We have Abaye, who's following seemingly just a regular guy and girl, and Abaye is convinced that they're going to do things that they shouldn't be doing together, and they don't. And Abaye just can't get it. He's like, there's no way I would have overcome this. And I think here is an important yesod to kind of base ourselves on. That is to say, generally the more spiritual a person is, often the more aware they are of the power of certain actions. Like for example, like what the beauty of a woman. A person who's a real tzaddik is aware of the exquisite beauty of a woman, the spiritual undercurrent of what the beauty of a woman is, and therefore he has a greater desire for it. Just to kind of take a step back and maybe take a more regular example, someone who's been a soldier, right, and off to war or in training, right, he's kind of hanging around all of his guy friends generally, and then once he leaves and he sees a girl, I mean, he's generally, even if the person is a girl who he may have thought was average on a regular day, now the girl seems exquisitely beautiful because wow, look at this girl, she's gorgeous. They haven't seen a woman in 3 months. So as far as the guy's concerned, this is the most beautiful thing in the world because he's kind of separated himself from it, so he's not used to it anymore. Whereas people who go to the beach every single day, them what's a woman's beauty? I mean, they see 100 of them every single day. There's nothing particularly unique about it. You know what I mean? Nothing so special. So we see that a person who's kind of more spiritually aware, more spiritually sensitive, will have desires that, say, somebody who's a lesser person will not have. And this is clearly demonstrated in the story about Abaye. Abaye was on such a high level that the concept that a person could be alone with a woman and not do anything was simply unheard of. Not because he was a sordid individual, but because it was so enticing to him. His Yetzer Hara was greater, the greater that the person is. That's the lesson here. And so now to bring it back into the 6th Perek, what do we learn from this? That clearly the Rabbanan see that a person who has to overcome certain desires is a super holy Jew. So how can we resolve this? On the one hand, we have Shlomo Melech and the regular philosophical position that a person who's more naturally disposed towards holiness is a good thing, a person who does not have to overcome all of his desires. And yet the Rabbanan seem to say that no, the more a person overcomes, right, Lefum Tsar Agra, the more work, the more one overcomes, the more the reward. So how do we resolve this? So Rambam resolves it like this. He said, the difference is in actions which all people agree are evil. Murder, theft, contempt for parents, injuring others for no reason, all of these are things that Rambam enumerates to say that these are the kind of things that the Torah clearly does not want people to be naturally disposed of. If a person's going around thinking, if only I could just murder people at will, and this guy who just cut me off, I wish I had a massive truck that I could just smash him into the wall, not a good thing. That's not a spiritual individual. Even if he's like, oh, but the Torah prohibits it, so I shouldn't do it. I really want to kill him, but I shouldn't kill him because the Torah says lo tirtzach. That's not good. I mean, good, don't do it, but that's not what should be preventing you from killing somebody. Is not the Torah's commandment. You should just not want to do that. That's a holier individual. And in fact, the Gemara in Yoma says, and again, Rambam quotes this, if they hadn't already been written in the Torah, it would have been proper to add them because they're obvious. We shouldn't want to do this. Rather, what the Rabbanan are talking about in terms of overcoming difficulties, that is about the chukim. That is to say, look at the instances that we mentioned above. That is to say, when Rama Shemin Gamliel Omer, Lo Yomer Adam ifshi, right, ifshi this, ifshi that. Rather, ifshi, I do want it. Umase Vavi Shabashmam Gazar, like, what can I do? Kadosh Baruch Hu told me not to do it. What are the examples? It's Basar Bechalav, Shatnez, and Erva. So milk and meat, and wearing shatnez, and sexual immorality. All three of those things are not necessarily the same type of kind of natural evils. It might be that a person could have like if the Torah hadn't prohibited it, what's the problem? Milk and meat, a cheeseburger, nothing intrinsically wrong with that. So we see that in those cases, a person should kind of have a more natural disposition to want to desire those things. However, the reason why he doesn't want to do them is only because God told him not to. That's the reason why he's not doing it. That is a more spiritual individual. I would like to create like a little footnote based on a comment by Rav Aaron Lichtenstein because he deals with this, and I think the way that most of us would understand this Gemara, or rather, sorry, this the statement by the Rambam is that seems to be like we can have these like lusts and drives to engage in these kind of more like these chukim, maybe ceremonial in quotation marks, these more ceremonial mitzvahs. Maybe Rambam is saying like we should have a more natural inclination that we should really want to do these things. However, because the Torah says no, then we shouldn't want to. Rav Aaron Lichtenstein has a very strong reaction to this, and he says that can't possibly be what it means. He finds it inconceivable. That's his word, inconceivable. Rather, what he says is, let's say, okay, so a person goes and he sees ham and bacon. Should a person be burning with lust and desire to eat the ham and bacon and only restrain himself because God told him not to, or because he can see a psak in the Shulchan Aruch that says no? He says that can't be what it means. Rather, what it must be is like this: the default status is these things are great, ham, bacon, right? Shatnez, arayot, fantastic, that's great. However, he should not want to do it because he sees in the Shulchan Aruch that that's not good. Now, what does that mean? That means that when a person says, "I don't want to do this," what is the basis for that desire not to do it? Is it because aesthetically, on a societal level, as a matter of policy, I don't like this, or it just looks gross? Is that why he doesn't do it? If that's why he doesn't do it, then a person who has a more natural disposition to do it and doesn't do it, that's a higher level. However, if a person has a natural disposition to do it, and then once he sees the psak in the Shulchan Aruch, right, the Torah commandment not to do these things, or the rabbinic commandment not to do these things, then at that point it like levels out, and he does not have that natural disposition anymore. That is to say, his disgust, his revulsion of doing things stems from the Torah's prohibition, not from his natural inclinations. That's the idea here. We'll end it there. Shabbat shalom. And we should rebuild Jerusalem soon. We should all see Mashiach b'mehera b'yameinu.